whole thing has been like, conferences start to reflect one another in terms of style of play. You can see it in the Big Ten. You see it in other ones. And I'm really curious your thoughts of once these conferences merge and you get the style of football that you'll get from an Oregon or a Washington, the USCs, UCLAs of the world, and how that merges with a conference that is used to playing the Midwest in that weather, that's a little bit more ground and pound and a little bit more run-oriented, physically oriented. Like, what do you make of those two concepts coming together, and who would eventually have an advantage like that?
Oh, wow. It's an excellent question. I mean, really depends on who it is. I think USC and specifically UCLA is going to struggle with it more so than Oregon and Washington, although Washington went pretty pass happy last year. Oregon didn't have a problem going to the horseshoe a couple years ago and bullying Ohio State in that game. So I guess I got to see it from a case-by-case basis. I can only report on what I've seen currently on the roster right now, and I would say of the four new teams, UCLA is going to struggle the most with the physicality. USC, still, even with Lincoln Riley there, they have the skill on both sides. But, man, up front, the line of scrimmage is still a question mark, at least on a game-in and game-out basis. I'm not sure that USC is there yet to play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, or Wisconsin, and Iowa also playing Notre Dame non-conference. They also play LSU next year in non-conference.
Can I move on to another media topic?
Of course.
Okay.
Do whatever you want.
Because you guys were talking about media. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw this. I know you did see this, right? Because I think you retweeted it. BetMGM with the Shedeur Sanders reportedly throwing 22 touchdowns, 0 receptions through a week of camp, and then pairing that up with 125 to 1 to win the Heisman.
Oh no!
What do you make of this? And it kind of ties in the media thing, which is social media is obviously a whole nother animal too. And when you have these sports books that are trying so hard to stay relevant on social media, you kind of get some icky posts like this one.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted that I thought it was predatory behavior by BetMGM. Number one, I mean, I don't know how you can verify a stat that he's thrown 22 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in camp. I mean, first week of camp. I mean, is that scrimmaging? Is that against air? Is that 7-on-7? I mean, what is that? And who's keeping track of that? So there's that regard. There's also, I mean, them throwing out a really good stat out there and then trying to get, enticing, at least in my opinion, people to get him to win the Heisman. I mean, sure, I guess there's a sucker born each day, but I didn't like that tactic by BetMGM. But I got to tell you, you mentioned that some of these, sports books, they have a job to do on social media to, gather interest and whatnot. I've been on Twitter 12 years. That's my most popular tweet. We got over 3 million views, 17,000 likes, well over 1,000 retweets. I mean, Colorado this year is as big of a lightning rod that I've ever seen in college football.
Yeah. It's funny. The other day, Colin Cowherd was making a real big case for the fact that in his mind, there needed to be more big college football games every single week of the year. And that's why you start to fold in the conferences to get more big games. And he said he looked at Labor Day weekend, and there were 2 big games. And what is it? Is it LSU and Florida State that week? Is that one of them? Right?
Yep.
And then he said the other big game is TCU Colorado, and I just laughed. I'm like, what? But to Brad's point, people are so amped up over this Deion Sanders thing. It is going to be boffo, and until they're completely horrible, it's going to get a lot of eyes.
Yeah, I think some of that's tongue in cheek on Colin. I mean, he's works for Fox. That's the big noon Fox game, Colorado TCU. Yeah. I do expect it to get a really big rating, to be honest with you. We'll see if the audience is still watching in the fourth quarter with TCU up 3 touchdowns. Yeah, I agree with him that there needs to be more big matches, specifically week 1. I mean, this year's slate's a disaster. Now, I will say this. Week 2 makes up for week 1 if you're diving into some of those matchups. It just comes a week later this year. But, yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to get it now with Texas and Oklahoma and the SEC and the 4 Pac-12 schools down the Big Ten. I mean, automatically you're going to get probably at least 2 or 3 more big-time matchups each and every week now.
And in turn, I'm not saying you guys are morons, but in turn, for all you morons who argued with me about a playoff, and I literally, if I was able to do sports talk radio and get a job at 14 years old, you would have heard the same thing from me because I hated college football. I really did. But for everyone out there who complained about the college football playoff, there are going to be schools that will make it with 3 losses now. And what that means is you can schedule aggressively. Like, I don't expect a ton of non-con because now you're going to play 10 games in conference, but losses will not be as devastating as they used to be, which means we get better matchups.
Yeah, better matchups. I agree with you there, but I think less of a sense of urgency. I don't know. I kind of like the fact that if you lose this game, you're kind of out of it. I don't know. I kind of like that. That you just can't mess up. You have to strive for perfection. Being a perfectionist myself, that's why it kind of drew me to college football. That you got to avoid mistakes at all costs. Now, I mean, you're telling me you can lose 2-3 games and still be okay. I don't really like it. I'm just being honest.
You can have an opinion. That's fine. Yeah. We can disagree on that one. We can disagree on a lot of stuff. Brad Powers is with us. At Brad Power 7 up on Twitter. BradPowerSports.com is where you go to get all of his picks. Where are you now? I know you tally how many bets you have out. How many bets do you have right now in college football total? And we're talking about futures and then on games.
Right around 350. Right now I'm working on FCS. So, I mean, that market's not out yet. Keep in mind there's 42 FCS versus FCS games alone on week 1. I'll probably have a bet on almost every one of those games. So I'm anticipating when the dust settles, 400-plus bets before games played.
Will, in November, you run to sign up for ESPN Bet in the jurisdiction that allows
it? Probably not. I'm guessing it won't be available here in Nevada. Well, I'll see what the odds, is it going to be similar to what Penn? I mean, are they going to have different people running it, or are they just going to, it's going to be exactly kind of the same, it's just rebranded as the same app as what they had under Barstool? If it is, then there's not going to be a sense of urgency for me.
It sounds like it's going to be rebranded Barstool. Right. Essentially, it just turns into ESPN Bet.
Brad, what was your opinion of Barstool? Were they in play for you?
In playing as far as the sports book?
Did you use that book? Could you get money down?
I did. Yeah, I did. I couldn't just. Yeah, sure, they'll grab a little bit more market share than what Barstool have, but I don't see ESPN Bet right now unseating the FanDuels or the DraftKings of the world. I don't see it. When somebody else has a 5-year head start on you, it's going to take a significant amount of money and a significant amount of time.
Patriots are up 3-0. 8 minutes left in the second quarter against the Texans. Minnesota, Seattle play in the preseason at 7 o'clock. Did you do anything with these games?
You know what? I did a teaser. Most books don't allow you to do teasers in the preseason. Reason being, I mean, when you got suppressed scoring, when your total's 37, those points mean a heck of a lot more. And even in these preseason games, you'd be surprised how important 1 and 2 is. The numbers 1 and 2 as far as an importance to sometimes it's better to go money line than to lay that 1 or 2 points because they really try to avoid overtime. So I teased Houston. It's not looking great right now, although the teaser would still be cashing. And then I also teased Minnesota up. So that's what I did tonight.
Where you went shopping for that teaser, are they pricing it the same as a regular teaser in the regular season?
They are. There's a 7-point teaser at Willie Hill Caesars minus 140. So
nice.
The 7-point teasers are typically 140 in the regular season. You're telling me there's 20 on average in the preseason. There's 20% less scoring. I mean, to me, some math guy will tell me on Twitter I'm an idiot, but to me that says that when there's 20% less scoring, those teasers are a lot more positive EV in my opinion.
Last minute here, I want to get a couple of impressions on games in week 1. Week 0 is actually 16 days away. Week 1 is 23 days away. We did a Fresno preview yesterday with the sideline guy for Fresno, Cam Worrell, who actually played there. He was really bullish on the Bulldogs. What do you think of this game on the road, plus 5.5 at Purdue?
Yeah, I lean towards Fresno State. I bet the under in that game. But right now I'm hearing whispers that Purdue might be a little bit banged up. So a couple of key injuries not reported yet. It's tough for me because Fresno State loses a heck of a lot. starting with Jake Haener at quarterback. Purdue's got a brand new coach, a first-time head coach. Got a bunch of transfers led by Hudson Card at quarterback, and Purdue was like one of 5 Power 5 teams where I didn't get a chance to see the spring game. So a lot of uncertainty. It's not one of my favorite bets on the board for week 1. So lean under and lean Fresno State.
20 seconds left. Virginia, the worst team in the ACC, getting 20. I'm asking if they are, but 28 at home against Tennessee.
Worst team in the ACC, no question, but not 28 points worse than Tennessee. At the game's neutral site played in Nashville, Nissan Stadium, where the Titans play.
Brad, I hope you get your teaser tonight. It's almost here, Brad. It's almost here. College football.